This is Jamie Drummond for Good Food Revolution. We have a return visit for Mr. John Sinopoli. How are you today, John?
I'm pretty well, thank you, Jamie. Nice to be here.
Now, we have had some developments in the last day regarding where we're going forward with both COVID regulations and how that impacts the hospitality industry. Perhaps you would like to fill us in.
Yeah, we have. We had big announcements this morning and this afternoon, both from the federal government and the provincial government, that were, I guess you can say, complementary, to be generous. The provincial government, due to the extreme rise in cases in the past number of days, has decided to close indoor dining for restaurants, as well as like gyms and a few other places as well, kind of like a return to phase two, but light, not schools, not daycares, thank God. So that severely affects our ability to do business as we're halfway through October and the weather's cold and patios are, the demand for patios is dwindling, even with heaters, if you were lucky enough to procure them at 3 times their normal value.
Okay.
So it's a challenging day for our industry. It's basically shutdown number 2 in 7 months, and there's going to be a lot of challenges ahead for a lot of people. Alternatively, or I guess like in conjunction with that, the federal government, specifically Minister Freeland, today announced a new rent program.
Okay.
Which is very, very much welcome, and the product of a lot of hard work and lobbying on the part of SaveSmallBusiness.ca, SaveHospitality.ca, which I'm one of the founding members, as well as many advocacy groups where the rent program finally is now going to be administered through tenants, not through landlords. So you won't have to rely on the goodwill of your landlord to participate, or any limitations that were put on your landlord based on conditions. And it's just, there was a lot of really silly bureaucratic things involved in the previous rent relief program that created confusion, complication, and basically kept people from getting relief. A lot of those have been stripped away, and they basically mirrored almost exactly the very successful wage subsidy program in terms of its administration and its conditions and how you go about registering for it and how you would receive the funds for it. So that's amazing. It's positive. It also expanded the availability of this rent money to larger restaurants with larger rent amounts and companies with a lot more venues, where they were excluded from that program before. They are now included up to a point. So it's great. And also and then the wage subsidy program was expanded and extended as well, up to 65%, which is about 10% less than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. Yep. So we need to fight for some more of that, but it is on a sliding scale. If you're closed down, it's 90%, so that's good. And then the best part of these two programs, and something that we've been fighting for months and months and months, is that they are effective through June 2021. So what that allows us to do is to know the financial landscape with which we're working and make plans and like know your budget month over month, understand what sales you may need to hit to finally get to a break-even point, because you're not going like every month with a new rent program that you have to wait till the 11th hour for it to be extended. And everyone can now plan. If you think you got to shut down for the winter, then you can shut down for the winter. If you think you can make it through with takeout and online events, then you can do that. At least we all know what the horizon will bear up until June, in which case, hopefully we have a vaccine and hopefully outdoor dining is full throttle again and everyone's in a better situation.
So were you expecting either of these announcements today, both with the lockdown of the indoor dining and these new schemes that the feds have put together?
Right. Yes and no. We it was being signaled to us for a couple of weeks from Minister Friedland's office
Right.
that they were working on a rent deal that would be better. We didn't know what the details were going to be, but it was going to be more generous. It was going to not be put through the landlords. She basically listened where Bill Morneau did not. And, I think our entire industry owes her that gratitude for having an open ears and building policy based on feedback from small business, whereas the previous finance minister just was not interested in that, didn't care about small business, didn't care what we had to say, was more concerned with preventing perceived fraud than with actually helping people.
Yeah, I remember.
So now we're in a much better situation. And we did expect an announcement. We didn't know what it was going to look like. I think we can all be satisfied with the rent announcement at the moment. Of course, yeah. And it will require some more help from the provincial government in terms of supplementary assistance, because if you're doing zero business, it's still going to be hard to pay 35% of your rent.
Of course.
And and all the property taxes and all the other fixed costs that go along with that. And then in terms of the provincial shutdown of indoor dining, yes, we were expecting it for the last 24 hours, but before that, it was all up in the air. It really was just something that the cases left the government no choice. The rise in numbers, the government had to do something for the public to understand that they were taking action. We're not convinced that the shutdown of indoor dining keeps anyone significantly safer as opposed to the shutdown of places of worship where there's no regulation. Right. Places like, if the health inspector walks into our place and people are walking around with no masks on, we're in big trouble. There's no such policing happening in other sections of society. And
right. I understand, yes.
And so, yes, we need to do our part. We may be more impacted than anyone else because of our public profile.
I hear you. Now, a couple of weeks ago, you had a meeting with John Tory, our mayor. How did that go?
We did. It was very good. John Tory is a reasonable man who likes to hear facts and evidence. It would appear to some people in our industry that he's kind of speaking out of two sides of his mouth, where he's supporting our industry big time by advocating to the province for a lot of the issues that matter to us. And then at the same time, the next day, saying that he endorses shutting down indoor dining because of the advice of the Toronto Officer of Health. He's stuck between a rock and a hard place. He does really care about our industry and he does really want to help. The tools in his kit don't allow him to do much directly. They don't have any money. They're bankrupt. There's no new revenue for them to tap into to help us. So advocacy with other levels of government, where he has the ear of Minister Freeland and of Premier Ford, that's extremely useful to our movement and to our industry. Alternatively, he is pressured by his constituents to take action in terms of, policy that they think is risky. We've been advocating to him and his office for a much more targeted approach, where punish the offenders and punish them hard, but don't punish people who've been following the rules with sweeping action. So there's a balance there. There's a middle ground to be found, but it's a challenge. It's a challenge for everyone involved.
Has there been much in way of enforcement with regards to COVID-19 regulations that are surrounding restaurants and the like?
Right. The answer to that question is both yes and no. So yes, there have been people who've been shut down for violations, but only after crazy violations and only after it was brought to public attention. Right. People are not being policed before the media get involved, before customers are put at risk, and that's part of the problem. We would welcome regular inspections by Toronto Public Health to all of our restaurants, because we know that we're doing our best to meet protocols, and we would work with those public health professionals to bring ourselves further along if they had suggestions of how we could do things better. That partnership does not exist. They don't have any staff. They don't have a budget for it. There's still only 5 health inspectors that cover all of downtown. I mean, that's insane when you think of the thousands of restaurants that they need to police. So there's no bylaw officers walking in, making sure people have masks. It's really an honor system. We're forced not only to police ourselves and our staff, but also our clients. We happily do it so that we can stay in business and follow the correct protocols. But we would welcome a huge enforcement army to come out, and if that keeps us open, we would welcome that.
Yeah, I hear you. As of yet, has there been any talk as to whether the province will extend the bottle shop sales of alcohol?
They did. They officially extended it a few days ago.
Right.
So they're going to legislate that change as a permanent regulatory change. Oh, wow. So that restaurants can now sell alcohol out the front door with takeout. So basically we become alcohol retailers in that sense, as well as food retailers, which is a huge change and improvement to our business model.
Yeah.
The difference, what we need now is we need the government to institute a wholesale discount on the purchase of alcohol. Yeah, so it's insane that we pay the same price for alcohol as every retail consumer in the province, given the amount we sell, and also given the fact that we are resellers of that alcohol. Yeah. So you're asking me to buy something at the same price the consumer could buy it at from the LCBO, and then turn around and sell it for a profit. It's really important that the provincial government of Ontario follow the lead of the province of BC and institute a 25% wholesale discount on alcohol. BC did 20%. We're lobbying for 25, given the higher cost of doing business in this province, and especially in urban areas like downtown Ottawa and Toronto and Hamilton, where rents are very high. We need a fundamental change to our business model to come out of this pandemic a successful industry.
Now, the only problem there is that would put you in direct competition with the LCBO, right?
Yeah, that's not a problem for us. That's a problem for the LCBO. And to be honest, to be frank, that's also not the LCBO's concern. The LCBO is not in charge of regulating alcohol rules. That's the AGCO and the Ministry of Finance. The LCBO's mandate is to execute those rules, to take those rules and run with it. They should not be involved in lobbying for or against regulatory changes. Unfortunately, they are, because those bureaucrats are very interested in self-preservation. And the more revenue they create, the more money they can spend on each other. That lobbying effort is in direct contravention to what's best for the citizens of Ontario. Yep. And not only that, it's specifically the hospitality industry, which is struggling mightily at the moment. And if the LCBO had any foresight and would look forward, they would see that the more business they can encourage for the hospitality industry and their licensee purchasers to create, the better long-term business will be for them. Instead of trying to protect margin, they should be trying to increase volume right now. And then the margin, the profits will come with the volume down the road. By giving up 20% or 25% margin on a wine, beer, and spirits, they can gain a massive market share that they don't have access to. If you think of rural Ontario, how many LCBOs exist in rural Ontario? It's hard. You have to drive an hour to get to an LCBO sometimes. Yeah. If you could just go to your local licensed bar restaurant and they have a little bottle shop section, we could be servicing every corner of the province for the LCBO at a fraction of the overhead that they normally would spend. So not only that, the LCBO carries a fraction of the kinds of alcohol that are imported into the province. Yeah. We are the gateway to the rest of that consignment alcohol, and more interesting wines, more interesting beers, more interesting ciders, more interesting spirits. Not to mention, we sell more Ontario produced wine and spirits than the LCBO does in general. And we're better advocates for our local homegrown industry. All of these things are reasons why the LCBO should just stay out of it, do their job as a retailer, and let us create a new market and new industries for a whole other segment of a selection of alcohol.
Now, with the AGCO providing the regulation, then it's always been my thinking that they, unfortunately, and it's a conflict of interest, work hand in glove with the LCBO.
They do, but they don't have to.
Right.
And the AGCO could work hand in glove with the LCBO and also work in parallel, work hand in glove with us.
Yeah.
I mean, we fall under the AGCO's guidelines and regulations just like the LCBO does. And we're a very large segment of society. And by the way, we represent way more jobs than those people employed at the LCBO.
Yep. Yeah.
The difference is we don't have one union that lobbies for us. We don't have one organization with one CEO that lobbies. We're 35,000 restaurants in Ontario, 7,000 or 8,000 in the GTA. And now we're starting to speak with a unified voice finally. And the government's listening.
Where are we at with regards to how many restaurants have had to shutter since the pandemic?
That's tough. I don't think there's been an accurate account that you can like go and check every day for a tally. But if I were to guess based on survey results that happened both in March and recently, we're probably somewhere in the 30 to 35% range of restaurants that have shut down. You see, anecdotally, you see every day more and more shut.
Yeah.
And some of those are places that have just been open forever. And the ownership is like, you know what? I don't want to go through this winter. I don't need to go through this pain. I was going to retire in 5 years. I'm just going to retire now.
Right.
There's that segment of closures that we've all seen happen. There's also a segment of places that were vibrant, profitable, energetic businesses with young owners who had many, many years still to contribute to the industry. Yet due to certain circumstances, like they had no patio opportunity, they were in the downtown core. The rent is too massive. Their landlords didn't qualify for the rent deal. There's many other circumstances that contributed to places like that closing. Every closing's a tragedy. Those are even more of a tragedy.
Yeah, someone's dreams dashed by the pandemic, right? So.
Yeah, 20 years of work, a life of investment. They walk away with their house fully mortgaged and no way to pay it. Like it's a disaster.
Well, I'm glad you got some good news today, John. Going into Thanksgiving, I'm glad that
thank you,
Minister Freeland has something up her sleeve for you. Thank you very much for joining us again at Good Food Revolution, and you have a great Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving, Jamie, to you and your family.
All the best.
Good to see you again.
Take care.
Bye.